Hello, Bill Molyneux here for Bill's History World with none other than Goober, the traveling bear. And we're at the Hampton Air Power Park Museum. Hampton Air Power Park Museum. And we were here several years ago with Josh, but it was under construction and we could not really walk around. So today we're going to check things out. Follow Goober and his adventures. It is Labor Day weekend 2025.
Holy cow, Goober and I have encountered Mr. James Curtis, retired Major of the Air Force, here at the Air Power Park. Mr. James Curtis, can you tell me about this aircraft?
This aircraft is an RF-4C. It's a reconnaissance aircraft. You can tell real quickly by looking at the nose. That's the telltale sign that it's a big old camera. And all they did was reconnaissance.
So no machine guns, really?
No machine guns. I think they did carry missiles for defense.
Okay.
I personally worked on F-4Es and put the last active duty United States F-4 to the boneyard. It's a real fun plane to work on. It smokes like crazy. It's loud as can be. Fun to watch takeoff. And the best part of the F-4 is I got a ride in one over in Korea.
Wow. Amazing. Now, Goober is really happy to see you here.
Hey, Goober.
And as you know, this is going to be our Memorial Day video. I hit some of these planes, but would you mind if I stop the camera and you just go over a few others with me real quick?
Sure, you bet.
Well, Mr. James, what's this aircraft?
This is a F-105D Thunder Chief. Not 100% certain, but I think it participated in early parts of the Vietnam War. I don't know it as well as I know the F-4 because I've completely ripped an F-4 apart. Personally.
Wow. So you could change the oil on an F-4.
I could change the oil, the hydraulic fluid. I could fold the wings. I can inspect and launch and recover.
Well, how about a B-36 bomber? Would you ever get to work on one of those?
No, I did not, but I did get to hop aboard a, if you can move a little to your right. I got to crawl in a B-52 that was overstressed, that was at my training base where I was at, and I started in the cockpit, and I walked all the way back to the tail gunner section on my knees through the bomb bay. And as you're going through, it's only about this wide, and you have to go through a door or two, and the bomb bay was open and you get to see down, and if you fall, you'd hurt yourself really bad.
Wow.
But that was back then. They had pure metal aircraft. There was no paint on it, so we would polish the aircraft, and the thought was the paint would slow it down or something like that. So I remember in tech school as an enlisted E-nothing, polishing a plane.
Well, the B-52, the tail gun, was that a machine gun or a cannon?
I believe it was a cannon, and there were two versions. The early version, someone sat back there. In the later versions, it was the gunner actually sat somewhere else other than the tail. But I don't know which version and what time frame.
And so the plane that we're talking about here, this was maybe Vietnam, right?
I believe it participated in Vietnam. I don't know its history as well as the F-4.
All right. How about behind me? Do you want to go and give me a quick talk on the next plane?
Sure. Let's walk this way.
All right. I'll follow you. I'll turn off the camera. So, Mr. James, what's this aircraft?
I believe this is a F-89 Scorpion. And I'm not certain of its combat history, but definitely we had a lot of them at one time.
So were these used in the Korean War or Vietnam War?
I don't think it was the Korean War. It would have been the beginning of the Vietnam War, I believe, but I'm not certain.
Okay. I am quite impressed with what's behind us, some kind of a missile?
I believe that's an Atlas missile, but I'm not certain.
All right. Well, they have
Jupiter? It says Jupiter right on it.
Jupiter right on it.
Yep.
Okay. And what do we have across the street, Mr. James?
That was, I believe, a 101. Let me make sure.
We'll pause the camera here and
Yep,
walk across.
it was
the
a
street.
101.
101.
As a long penetrating aircraft.
Is this a Vietnam aircraft or Korean? I guess it would be more Vietnam.
Vietnam, because in Korea we still were using prop aircraft.
By the way,
we used Corsairs, F4U Corsairs that had an 11-to-1 kill ratio in World War II. We were still using that in Korea.
Wow, and that was a propeller plane.
Yes, it was. That's the Gullwing.
That's the one Pappy Boynton flew, right?
You got it.
All right. Let's take a walk over there.
All right.
Well, Mr. James, something special about this fighter, right?
Yep, it was a long-range penetrator, and it had a nuclear mission, excuse me. And I don't know if it was the first fighter with a nuclear missile, but that's. I'm looking at something underneath. I'm wondering if something fell off the plane.
There's some kind of cone in the back.
Yeah, there are cones on jets that have afterburner at the back. There are cones, and when they go to afterburner, they squeeze it down to concentrate the thrust. And some of them had huge tails of fire coming out the back. The best is the F4. The F-111 had a huge one and was very loud. And, of course, the SR-71 when it takes off.
Well, would you mind doing the other two aircraft that we have here? Or three?
Sure, we'll meander over there.
All right.
Oh.
Well, we haven't quite zipped over. What's the tail cone?
The tail cone, so when the engine is fully installed, this would go over and protect the engine. So if this is not the engine, this is a shroud, and the engine would be sticking out. So it looks like for this aircraft, in an F4, which I know well, all the doors drop down and everything comes out. In this one, it looks like the tail cone has to come off, and then you pull the engine out.
And then you pull the engine out.
Yep. I never worked on this aircraft, though.
All right. Well, Mr. James, what's this aircraft?
This is an F-86. And I was trying to see if I could figure out which... where it was.
So would that be Korean War, right?
I am not positive.
Well,
like I said, my expertise is truly the F4 and later planes.
All right. Well, let's continue on our journey here. There's a lot of aircraft you have to look at.
Yep. I'm going to point one thing out.
Okay. Here we go, everyone.
So, what's critical in flight and when they're doing... Are you on?
I'm on.
Okay. What's critical in flight is control of air going over flight control surfaces, whether it's the wing with ailerons or the rudder. If you look at this aircraft, it's got vanes attached to it, and that's to help smooth out the air. And it's the same as when you put a comb through your hair to straighten it out. This helps keep the airflow smooth going over the flight control surface.
Wow. Very impressive. Well, we're just going to walk and leave the camera running here as Mr. Curtis walks up to the next plane.
This is a Corsair, not to be confused with the Corsair from World War II. This was primarily a Navy aircraft, and as a kid, I painted up a model of this, and the model had like so many 500-pound bombs on it, it wasn't funny. Each one of these stations in the model kit had 6 500-pound bombs on it. And then it had some missiles as well.
Is this a one person?
I believe it is one person.
Okay. Now, is this Korean War or is this Vietnam era? Or
this is Vietnam and later.
And later. Very cool. So it would carry a large payload.
It carried a lot of dumb bombs.
All right.
You can see the in-flight refuel arm up there, right below the cockpit. That sticks out. And the difference in Air Force in-flight refueling and the Navy, the male part of refueling in flight is on the receiving aircraft. So there's like a parachute that goes over the top, and that's how they refuel. In the Air Force, the male part of refueling is on the giver of gas, the passing gas. And they have to spot a hole in the plane and stick it in there. Then it locks on, and the planes have to fly as close to an identical pattern. There is the ability for it to go in and out a little bit. So if it goes up a few inches and down a few inches, but that requires lots of practice, and pilots don't get enough credit for in-flight refueling.
All right. That's amazing. How about we hit the next plane over? I'll turn off the camera.
All righty.
Well, Goober had a question about this, how you refuel flying around. So, Mr. James, tell us about that.
So actually, in-flight refueling, I read about, I believe it was a book on the commander's reading list, 12 captains or something like that. And it talked about guys went up in biplanes and they had a barrel of gas in one plane, and they threw a garden hose over the side to the other plane. And that's how the first attempt to pass gas happened. Long before World War II.
A garden hose.
A garden hose.
Well, that seemed a little risky.
Or tubing. But that's how they had a little hand pump, and that's how the first passing of gas in the air.
Wow. All right. We'll follow you. Well, what do we have here?
I believe this is a T-33 trainer. So once you pass basic flight school and you move up to jets, this is probably one of the first ones you'd fly.
So I was never in the Air Force or the military. And again, thank you for your service, Mr. Curtis. But when you're going to flight school, do you go and learn first how to fly a propeller plane and then you go to jets, or do you start right with jets?
It depends, and it's changed over time. When I was trying to be a pilot, it started with a plane kind of like this, and then it went, if you were going to do fighters, you went to T-38, which is basically an F-5. Same thing, only they don't trust you with weapons yet.
Okay.
And then once you graduate from the T-38 for fighter people, then you go to a school that's specifically for your platform, whether it's an F-15, F-16, whatever.
Well, since I have you here, is there a particular aircraft we could go back to that you could give us a little more detailed information about?
Well, the F-4E or F-4C that's over there, I can tell you what it would be armed with and stuff like that if it was in fact an E, because I've crawled in one and ripped one apart and put it back together.
Well, can we do a minute or two of that?
You bet.
All right, thank you. Well, we're very fortunate to have Mr. James here, retired major, to give us more information on this fighter.
Yep. So if this was an F-4E, the major difference is instead of a flat nose door, it would be curved, and underneath there would be like a bubble going along, and that's where the cannon is. And obviously no plexiglass on the side. It is a two-person aircraft. You have a pilot and a WISO, which is a weapons officer. Their capability on this pylon, they would have 2 AIM-9s, and on the other one across, they'd have 2 more AIM-9s, so you could take 4 AIM-9 shots. By the time I got to F-4s, you'd have 3 AIM-7s, which is a radar-guided missile. And on our right side, we always had an ECM pod in that one.
Now, are these torpedoes that Goober is sitting on?
No, that's a fuel tank.
Oh, that's a fuel tank.
Yep. And we used, when they went TDY or cross-country or I went to Egypt with F-4s, they would have a travel pod with the air crew stuff in it. And that actually used to be napalm tanks. That's what we would drop napalm in, was what we eventually used as travel pods.
Okay, so they would store some of their personal belongings in there?
Yes.
Well, that's quite amazing. So I noticed, how come the wing doesn't have machine gun holes for... So
What?
they're not carrying machine guns in the wings like the World War II planes?
No, in fact, in a launch, so now these are all seized up, but in a launch, this comes down and forward, and that one does not, and the flaps come all the way down. This has flaps and aileron. The flaps, if you wanted to slow down real quick, you'd make it dirty, and by doing that, you'd put the flaps, and then you have speed brakes, which are underneath, and they would pop out. And when I used to go to Red Flag, some of the aircrew would put, because they didn't have chaff and flare, chaff blocks radar, flare burns as bright as the sun to stop heat-seeking missiles. So they would bring containers of chaff and they'd throw it in the speed brake. So if someone got a lock on them on the range, they'd use the speed brake, and that chaff is like tiny little pieces of tinfoil. And I think one of them got in trouble for it once, but hey, it worked.
So when did they stop putting the machine guns in the wings like World War II aircraft?
I know the F-4 didn't have it. That one didn't. Don't think it had it. Another thing the F-4 had, one time they put 4 or 5 external cannons on this thing, and for every action there's a reaction. When the person pulled the trigger for a second, the plane like stuttered in the air. There was so much back thrust.
So would it fire several rounds then?
Oh yeah. So you just hit it and 100 rounds are gone.
Oh wow.
So that's if this was an F4E. Between every flight, you'd have to jump in the intake and go down, and you spin the engine, and you'd run your finger across the leading edge of the rotating blades, and you'd make sure there's no nick. If you found a nick in it, it would ground the aircraft.
So you actually had to climb up into that?
Yes. So the way you're looking at it, it's actually a little bit off the ground, and right. I think it was a little stand that I would roll up, and it would help me get in. So this would actually be down to here.
Okay. So I guess that was a few years ago.
Yes. I couldn't do it now. If I had a ladder coming right to here, stepping in, yeah, I could get in. Inside there's it's called a PDOT tube, and it's measuring the air as it goes through the engine. And this is a vari-ramp. And what happens is, depending on the situation of the aircraft, this can close off to keep air from going in, or the full air amount, and it helped in engine dynamics.
Okay.
And preventing stalls.
So there's an engine on each side, correct?
Yes, there are 2 engines. 2 engines and 2 separate hydraulic systems. And I think there's a third. There's PC1, PC2, and I think there's a utility one as well.
Wow. Anything else you'd like to tell us about this aircraft?
The most fun I ever had was getting to launch and recover these and getting a flight in one. My saddest day was when I sent the last F4s for the United States to the boneyard.
Wow. Quick question. Did you meet any World War II pilots that were retiring out, or Korean War?
At the 50th anniversary of the Air Force at Nellis Air Force Base, I got to meet Chuck Yeager, and I asked him if I could take a picture with him. And his comment was, "Why would you want a picture with me?" And I just looked at him and smiled.
That's a great story. Well, let's find a spot to close out our video. What do you say?
All righty.
Well, Mr. James Curtis, retired Major of the United States Air Force, thank you for this tour. what else would you like to say to complete our video for this Memorial Day weekend?
Well, first of all, thanks to all the people that ever served, no matter what your job, whether you were a pointy end of spear fighter or a cook. We need you all, and thank you for your service. And lastly, this is a real nice air park down here in Hampton on Mercury Boulevard. I encourage people to come out. You saw the outside, but there's an inside museum as well, and it's worth the stop if you're down here. It's even a destination shop.
All right, and it's Goober approved. Thank you, Mr. James Curtis. Everyone out there, stay safe, be kind, and be courteous, and thank you for watching.